Hello, people of the internet. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. Today, we are going back to our roots and reading some scary Reddits. And the question that is asked is, what's the creepiest experience you've ever had while camping? I was out with a friend for a weekend camping trip in the middle of nowhere of North Georgia. We stopped at a local grocery store to stock up on snacks and beer when we found out it was a dry county. We asked the cashier if there was a nearby county where we could buy beer. She gave us directions to a bar that was right across the county line, about a 10-minute drive. So we decided that if we couldn't buy beer, we would just stop and have a couple before heading to the campsite. We followed the directions that she gave us, and it was getting dark. We pulled up to a building with no signs saying it was a bar, and had all of the windows bricked in. It had a single light bulb over the screened door entrance, and it seemed to be the only light around. We sat in the car for a minute and made several nervous jokes about the movie Deliverance, then decided that we didn't need a drink after all. The next day we were chatting with the other campers at the site where we were staying at, who seemed to be locals, and we mentioned the bar. A couple of them told us independently that that place was not and never has been a bar, and they thought we were being lured into trouble. That is horrifying. Imagine if they had have gotten out of their car and walked up. What do you think is in that building? A murder, obviously, but what do you think would have happened? The next story. Went out on a camping/canoe trip with my dad and two best friends and their dads about 20 years ago. We met up with our guide to show us through the more advanced part of the river we were going down. While on the trip, we were catching fish during the day and fixing them for dinner. Except our guide, he was eating canned fruit and beanie weenies. We were all sharing our meal, different thoughts on how we liked our dinner. One evening was particularly cold, and the guide asked to sleep in our tent because we bought a small portable heater. My dad politely gave an excuse to not let him in the tent, but said we could share the heater instead. Fast forward 5 years, we were watching the local news, and our guide's face pops up. Turns out he was a child rapist that had been wanted, and they captured him. Oh my gosh. The next story is, when I was a kid, we used to go on camping trips in the summer with my parents' caravan. One year, my sister and I decided that we wanted to sleep in a small tent instead, which was set up directly in front of the caravan. We didn't make it even one night. Every now and then, both of us clearly heard the sound of something rubbing against the tent. We'd been scared shitless because we thought someone was walking around our tent. I don't remember how we got out of the tent. I guess we started screaming for our parents, and at one point, my father took a look around, and we tried again, but after a while, heard the same sounds again. We ended up sleeping in the caravan anyway. A few days later, we still didn't want to sleep in the tent, so my father started to disassemble it. Turns out, some animals built tunnels directly underneath our tent, and in doing so, rubbed against the bottom wall. We didn't notice anything because we were lying on an inflatable mattress. We heard only the sound of them rubbing against the wall. It's pretty funny now, but creeped us out then. This happened on a trip a few years ago. One night, midweek, when the park is usually quieter, I woke up having to use the bathroom around 2 a.m., so I left the trailer to go to the comfort stations. The site was one of those corner sites, so there was a really short trail in the back of the site through the woods before you get to the lights where the washroom is. You can technically go around the tent, but I figured I would just cut through there like I usually do to save time because I was tired. As I'm passing the middle of the trail, I hear a light noise that sounds like it's right beside my ear. It sounds like giggling, so I picked up the pace a little bit I swear to this day I heard something deeper in the woods, a female voice, say, "Hello." To say I jumped was an understatement. I sprinted full throttle to the lights, tripped on a log, and ripped my pant leg and shin. I made it to the bathrooms alive, feeling painful and kind of stupid. Once I made it to the comfort station, I did my business and talked myself out of it being anything unnatural, like the good biologist that I am. I figured that I must have misheard a raccoon or something. I didn't believe in the paranormal, so the worst case, it was a person. I didn't like getting jumped by some weirdo while I was out at night by myself, so I made the decision to take the longer way back in the road and skip the shortcut. As I passed by the entrance for the woods, giving it wide berth if we're being honest, I can only tell you what I heard, but I swear as clear as day I heard a whisper that said, "Come back." I think that's the fastest I've ever run in my life, and I'm a little embarrassed to say I don't do camp bathrooms at night by myself anymore, but I can't explain what happened. Luckily, my family got a new trailer the following season with an indoor bathroom, so it hasn't really been an issue since. This isn't necessarily creepy, but scary as fuck. Was camping, staring at the stars when a meteorite flew overhead and towards the mountains we were camping near. When it exploded, it was probably a couple of miles away when it popped, but it sounded like dynamite going off and lit up the sky to almost daytime levels. This isn't my experience, but my mom's, and the reason she didn't let me and my siblings go camping. She had gone camping with her friends sometime in the 80s. It was the first time they had gone, and she didn't know anything about camping. The way she tells it, her friends picked the most isolated place in the woods that they could find so they could drink underaged without anybody coming along to check on them. After partying until about 1 a.m., they decided to go down for the night. My mom woke up and had heard some noises and shook her friend awake as she was scared. Her friend just assured her it was an animal and to go back to sleep, so she did. The next morning, she woke up to large boot prints circling around their tent and campfire. The footprints came from the woods and left in the same direction. They couldn't trace it further because of the foliage. They packed up and left that day, even though they were supposed to be there for a week. Apparently, they weren't the only ones this happened to, and the boot prints were found a number of times over the next 2 years. No one was ever caught doing it. Girlfriend and I went tent camping, and there were only maybe 5 other campers on the campground, all spread apart. While in the middle of the night, we both were awakened because we hear footsteps maybe 20 feet from our tent. We both just lay there in dead silence, listening to the footsteps. They were very slow and not moving around much. No other breathing sounds, and it didn't sound particularly heavy. We both thought it was a person. The weirdest part is that after about 30 seconds of the footsteps, they just stopped, like no trailing off into the distance, nothing. It's like they stopped, and that was that. Still don't know how or what it was about. Was out camping with a cousin of mine, and I fell asleep in my tent. In the middle of the night, I felt something touching and slithering in me. Wait, slithering in you? I ignored it at first, believing that I was still at home and it was my brother or some shit. But then I finally realized where I was, and I opened my eyes. It was a caterpillar. Scariest shit I've ever experienced in my life. Wait, but slithering in. Guys, I didn't press my remote and my TV just talked to me. sightings and did what we were told. Then sometime in the middle of the night, we started hearing a weird chittering. One of us turned on our flashlight and pointed it up at the vaulted ceiling. Bats. Lots of them. Not surprisingly, someone screamed and the whole nest started wigging out. Everyone started panicking and running around, which only made the bats wig out more. The parents came running from the other bunker when they heard screams and got a face full of bats when they opened the door. My dad took me out of the troop not too long after that. Years ago, me and my girlfriend and I were teachers, and in June of each year, we would take a group of kids camping. We had a 12-person tent set up on our site, which was next to a small lake. The site included a picnic table and a fire ring. Part of the trip was telling campfire stories about the Jersey Devil, since the campground was located in an area where there had been many sightings over the years. The kids enjoyed being scared and they couldn't wait to return the following year. This was around the 5th annual trip we had taken, and up to that point, nothing had happened. One night, after stories when the kids were fast asleep, my girlfriend and I sat by the campfire in beach chairs. We had just bought a new puppy and she was tied to the tent on a long leash so she could run around. Suddenly the logs in the fire collapsed and the light from the fire dimmed considerably. Our propane torch that was on the picnic table dimmed at the same time. It became almost pitch black, and that's when our puppy started to growl. She sat up right next to me, and every hair on her back was standing up straight as she stared into the darkness. Suddenly, from out of the water comes this large figure about 20 yards from our site. At first I thought it was a person, but it was bent over and started running on all fours. I could see the outline of the thing, and the back end was higher than the front. It wasn't a bear or a dog or a deer. It looked and it ran like something I'd never seen before in my life. It was in no hurry as it trotted by and into the woods near our campsite. I jumped and I ran to my car and turned on the lights, and the lights lit up our campsite, but there was no sign of anything out of the ordinary. I told my girlfriend to wake the kids because we were leaving. We were getting the fuck out. She was the braver one and convinced me to stay though. We eventually calmed down and turned in for the night. I laid down by the tent opening with a large butcher knife and did not sleep until the sun came up. Nothing like this has happened to me before or since, but I swear I saw something that was not a man or an animal. I haven't been camping since. Have you guys ever had an encounter with an urban legend or a myth? I'm curious. The next story, my girlfriend and I were camping on Labor Day. We planned on leaving Tuesday. Everyone else at the site left on Monday. It was nice and peaceful. There were 2 people, each in their own site not far from us. They both stared at us every time they walked or drove by. My girlfriend was quite creeped out, but I wasn't feeling too worried. On Monday night, my girlfriend woke up saying she heard someone trying to open the tent. I grabbed her headlight, opened the tent, and pointed the light outside. I didn't see anything, so I assured her it was nothing. We both went back to sleep. In the middle of the night, we would this video.